Welcome back, y'all. So, thank you for coming back. Thank you for being in space and sharing in this experience. I thoroughly enjoyed the singing this morning. Bless you. You go into a kindergarten class, right? Ask them all. Raise your hand if you can sing, and all the hands go up, right? Generally, usually, mostly. Go into a high school class, or maybe even junior high. How many of you can sing? Oh, no, I can't sing. Or I can sing, but it's only this or that. The bottom line is we can all sing. And it doesn't have to be with our voice. So it's an energetic piece that somewhere along the way, perhaps we learn to disconnect from. We made up a story in regards to singing that it's ugly, bad, wrong, whatever. Even earlier, someone over here made up a story about because I was doing it differently. I was doing it in the way that felt right for me, that I was trying to mess y'all up. Wasn't the case. I was doing what felt right for me. And that's a great segue into how we let our mind throw off the experience that we're having, or with ourselves, in our body, or with others. There was, do you mind if I share a story that we had earlier, I think it was Thursday, when I was asking you about, when did you start walking this path? And you shared something about coming out of the closet. And you said, so there was a message that was given to you when you had these experiences for you, connected to spirit, and perhaps there was a time when you took those messages on. Those messages said that I'm the devil. That's, I think, were the words you said. And perhaps at an early age, you began to believe that about yourself. So that limited your experience until you got to that place where, you know what, I'm coming out of this closet and I'm having this experience. I'm connecting to it. So you connected with yourself, and then that changed your connection with how you engage the world. Whereas I was over here connecting with myself and the energy that felt good for me, I might have been disconnecting from somebody on the other side of the room. So there's awareness. We have our life experience that generates stories, meaning. And I spoke in the past couple of days about things that turn into self-limiting beliefs. Or maybe it's a belief that limits somebody else. I make up a story about the red coat. The red coat is dangerous or unlucky. The red car or the color red is dangerous in that other story. So in this, what Michelle drew earlier, and the intention of this workshop is to form that connection, that conscious connection between the spirit, the body, and the mind, and to access that. And the way we do that, I was offered to do the piece around mind, and we talked about the mindfulness and how to get mindless. And yesterday we talked about that concept of the beginner's mind and accessing that place of curiosity, which puts aside, it's a conscious, or it's that epiphany or that choice. Somebody, I think you were talking about choices earlier, that choice to get out of the story and further explore, investigate what's going on, whether it's in my body or in my head. So I'm going to ask you to access that piece, or choose to get into that beginner's mind. And maybe what I'm about to present is my belief anyway, is that we already know all this stuff. What I'm going to share is just a reminder. And if it's something that is new, or you hadn't remembered it previously in this lifetime anyway, right on. So we're talking about connection. And I'm going to explore the avenue of where potentially these self-limiting beliefs might have derived from. I've done that for myself personally, and this is a beautiful example. And I'm going to ask you all to energetically participate in this. We're going to create a living sculpture, if you will, a visual representation. So in that connection, what often shows up early, when we come into the world, when we're sourced from the divine and we come into existence, we're connected to that goldenness, that essence of infinite love, unconditional love, the vastness, infinite possibilities, the beauty of the essence of who we are when we come into the world as children. So I would ask if there is someone who's willing to hold that energy, just embody that. They call it a golden child. All right, okay.
When you guys want to do it, we'll do it if you are comfortable.
So just because, and the invitation, you raise your hand, so I'm going to go with it. So the invitation here is to further be aware of any resistance around that. Or not.
No, there is none.
Okay.
That's why I said no. So you said to hold that energy of the golden child?
That infinite possibility, and you know what? How about if we all do it? We all move through this, and we all connect to that place in ourselves. Infinite possibilities, unconditional love, heart wide open.
So you didn't say child, it's the...
Beg your pardon?
You said the golden child?
Child.
Good. Okay, good. I just didn't hear you.
Thank you. Sometimes I slip off into that East Texas dialect and... Pardon? That Texas twang. So connect to that space, that infinite possibilities, that goldenness, that beauty. Because that's how we come into the world. And we come into the world with, we don't have that conscious concept of it, but we have two questions essentially, maybe more. But the two essential questions is there a place for me? And will I be loved? Essentially, that's our two desires. Is there a place for me? Will I be welcomed here? Will I be accepted? And will I be loved? So just anchor that in your body. Infinite possibility, that goldenness, that beauty, that light. all the colors. Now what happens in the world, you're welcome to come back, just anchor that in your body and come back to this place. So what happens, not by our choice, but just by the design of life, by the design of this human experience, is one of the first things we experience is pain. We might experience that pain in the womb, but certainly through the birthing process, there's pain. Come out into a harsh environment, we leave that comfort, that nurturing, that sustenance, and we come out into bright light, poking and prodding. And our body, we get out of that bodily experience into, the internal organs have to start functioning in a different way. So we experience that pain. My granddaughter, I was present. She was born on New Year's Day. I drove out of here, made it to Houston, southwest side of Houston, 15 hours straight, and I get there, and she hadn't been born yet. So I did a little process with my daughter, and then I said, okay, I'm going to go get breakfast, and I get down to my truck, and I get the call, she's having it. I don't know. Go back up there, she has a baby. And a beautiful thing, first time grandfather, thank you. But later on, I went a month later to visit, and I'm holding her, right? And she's perfectly content, just in that beautiful state of that goldenness. And she gets hungry, or something's going on inside. She feels that discomfort, she feels that pain, and she starts expressing it. And that's what we do as babies. We express it naturally. We are so close and in tune to the source that those emotions that come up for us move through our body. Now, she's still, she's 9 months old now, beautiful, happy baby. But I witnessed that first experience of pain, and I got in touch with my own sadness. And I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a long process, a lifelong process. And I think I've done well enough with my daughters that they're not going to encourage, consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously, a disconnection. I remember my youngest daughter was, I don't know, 5 or 6, and she was in her room sitting in the middle of the floor crying. And I went in there and I said, baby, what's wrong? Said, I don't know. Are you sad? Yeah. I said, well, that's okay. You cry if you need to. I gave him permission. I didn't say, oh no, stop crying. So that's another way that pain comes up for us. As we're growing up, there's things that happen in our family of origin or in society with our caretakers. Pain happens on a mental level, on an emotional level, perhaps even on a spiritual level. Perhaps there's a child that, about 6 years old that sings beautifully, sings all day long, all the time. And, with mom and dad out in public, singing. One of them says, stop that. Stop that. It's not appropriate to sing right. Well, that might she feels that arrow. There's a comment that I've made about, what, I can take the slings and arrows. Well, she takes that stone from the sling or the arrow, And if that happens enough, she begins to disconnect with that goldenness, that essence, that beauty, that part of her that is connected with joy and sings. So the invitation now is just connect to that place where pain resides in you. If there's any, perhaps later on, going through life, and you might have heard a phrase, something like, "Oh no, we don't do that in this family, not in this house." We get denied that piece of us that we come into this world with two questions. Will I be loved, and will there be a place for me? Will I be accepted? So we suffer that sling or that arrow from not being accepted. And we experience that pain. Maybe later on in school, around our peers. Maybe our body has a peculiar shape or we have a funny way of talking. Maybe our ears are too big. Maybe our skin's the wrong color. And we start taking the slings and arrows from others. So there's the source in each of us to explore of where those self-limiting beliefs. Oh, I'm not accepted because this part of me is bad or wrong, because if I want to fit in, I cannot be me. Just connect. I'm not going to ask you to dwell in that space of pain, but just connect with that sense of it. And it continues to show out throughout life. And how we learn to manage that pain, we develop, call them coping skills, things that we may develop early in life may have worked for us then and kept us safe, or kept us from re-experiencing that pain. But they often, that old programming doesn't work in where we are today. So just gently breathe into that place where you can connect with that sense of pain, acknowledge it, and let it go. So once we experience that pain, and then we experience pain again and again and again, what's the next thing that generally develops afterwards?
Disease.
Pardon?
Because you say once you've developed that pain.
What comes after the experience?
Sometimes disease comes up, sick illnesses.
Beg your pardon?
Sometimes, I'm sure you speak up. Sometimes diseases or illnesses come up.
Illnesses, sure, certainly. That can show up in the body, and those quite possibly derive from a place of fear. So we come in with that goldenness, that infinite possibilities. We experience the pain, and then we learn fear. I'm afraid that I'm going to feel that pain again. Yeah, we're encouraging and talking about connection, but really in this instance we are talking about the disconnection. We're disconnecting from that golden essence, that pure beauty, the infinite possibilities, where as we experience life from birth, we begin to disconnect from our authentic self, our beauty, our gold. What often is the case, and I'm speaking in generalities, as an overview of what transpires for us But certainly what happens for one happens for all of us. We all experience this on a collective, on that spiritual realm. But in the discussion around connection, and particularly with our focus on how we become disconnected or where the potential for disconnection happens, we're looking at this with that beginner's mind. That we're exploring that within ourselves, but we're also exploring this collectively. So we experience the pain and the physical pain, and perhaps we begin to experience the mental anguish, emotional pain. So we begin to disconnect from our physical body, and we disassociate. And there are stories, this is, in our development, in our childhood development, we come to a place of self-awareness that I'm not going to be accepted, I'm not going to be loved if I am connected to my goldenness. If I express who I am, my authentic self. This isn't, a 6-year-old doesn't have this cognitive dialogue. It's all on that emotional level. Let me give you an example, a personal example. I shared that I grew up in a deaf environment. So my mom and dad were married, but they divorced while I was still in utero. I never knew my dad, never met the man. My mom worked 3 jobs. Rarely did I see her. I saw her on occasion. I was raised by my deaf grandmother. Grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, the deaf congregation of it, which met down in the basement. So there was potential for a message for me to take on there, right? That's a metaphor, And I took it on. I don't know that was the direct source, but the deafness I was hearing. And at an early age, I would have to make phone calls. 5 years old, make and receive phone calls to the Social Security office, to the doctor's office, for my grandmother. And I didn't know the words that were being said. I had to ask for how they were spelled, and then spell them out, and not knowing what they meant. I was scared to death at 5 years old. I knew, or I associated, the belief I constructed around deafness, or being hearing in that deaf world, was that it was scary. And for me, being scared, I froze. That was my fight or flight. I froze. It was fight, flight, freeze, fawn. There's other parts of that. And I got the direct message, you can't be scared, you can't freeze, I need you to do this. So I was a lifeline. So I disconnected from my fear. Fast forward many years, many decades, I get on my path of personal growth, and I get a piece of paper before me that says, list your 3 biggest fears. And I put a big red X. I ain't afraid of shit. Because that's the mindset I was in. I was so disconnected from fear for most of my life. I was also disconnected from that joyful beauty essence of me as a carefree, playful child that liked to climb trees. That's another story. I used to love to climb trees. Get down out of there. So we've all had those experiences in our lives that send a message, and it's not necessarily the words that were said, it's the message that we took on that generated the limiting beliefs that perhaps we've carried through life. Is that resonating?
It's the story of the human being.
Exactly. So what we're doing here is, from that place of curiosity, is we're following this path of the human experience and how we come, and with the intention is to explore for each of us where we come up or potential source with a self-limiting belief. Those thoughts that hold us back. I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm unlovable, I can't sing.
I can't dance.
Well, I can't sit down, remember? So, for you specifically, there was some place along your journey where you said, you know what? Yes, I can. I'm making a choice to go and connect with that part of me that I disconnected from. And thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
So we all have that sense of fear that evolves out of that place of experiencing the pain. Our emotional selves become separate from our physical selves as our mental selves create beliefs in order to feel safe, to not experience that pain. Anger can be a great motivator. It is certainly, in a healthy application, it's a way to establish and maintain boundaries in a clean way. But generally we don't learn that in that progression of our human experience. We experience that pain and the fear, and for me, that fear, that scary of my experience at an early childhood, I bypassed the sadness. There was which certainly got covered up with anger. Anger is a natural emotion. But how often are we taught how to effectively use it, or how to do it in a healthy way, in a clean way? Generally, we learn it by seeing, and it usually comes out in rage or violence or yelling, a highly energetic. We've all experienced anger, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did you feel afterwards? Ill, drained, depleted. How many of you experienced anger in a clean, healthy way and said, hey, you know what? That's not acceptable. And done it and not experienced that drainage afterwards, right? So it's making that shift. We're talking about the connection to body, mind, and spirit, and as we're making this journey away from that golden child as our natural progression somewhere, and we'll get into this, we're going to have to eventually turn around and make that journey back. So oftentimes a great metaphor for that anger, particularly for men, it could also be applicable to women, is a sword. We use it, and we're not trained in it, but we lash out with that sword to keep from feeling the fear and experiencing the pain. So part of the story around my childhood was Mom worked 3 jobs to provide for me and Granny. Granny had Social Security coming in. And the message that I got, or the direct message I was told was, when Mom's home, because she was only home for a few hours at a time, and when she was home, she was sleeping. Got to be quiet. Don't make Mom angry. Did I experience Mom's anger? Sure. And what was her anger? It was that tongue. And she was really adept at lashing out and nurturing a sense of shame for me. It seems like an oxymoron, right? Nurturing a sense of shame, but she was loving. I reconciled that. And it was part of my life path. I chose to come into this to experience that and then to heal from it, because it was not only, in my exploration, from her, it was generational. So I've cleared a lot of generational karma in my process. For me, So a lot of times that anger, we're told, oh, you cannot express that anger. Boys generally are encouraged to express it in one form or another. Girls probably not. And, that may be different today, But certainly when I was growing up, it was different. But regardless, for all of us, if that comes on our path, that you cannot express that anger. Not only are we not taught how to express it, we're told that we can't. And generally, that anger that sword winds up turned inward, or that tongue winds up being turned inward. We begin to tell ourselves stories, and those stories turn into belief systems that we carry. How many of us were taught to express our anger? Raise your hand.
Healthy anger or unhealthy?
Either way, just to express it.
You were taught to express, we
Oh,
weren't
yeah.
allowed to.
Taught by example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taught by example, taught by example, sure.
Taught by example.
Yeah. Growing up, a significant portion of my family, which I'm not going to go into the whole tangent on my family tree because it's quite peculiar, but we're white, Caucasian. I later learned that was not entirely the case, and racist. They're from Oklahoma and Arkansas, and came down through East Texas, and I was born in Houston. So I was very much raised racist, blatantly. And it was part of my path to heal that in me, not only in me, but generationally, and to not then perpetuate that with my children. That ended with me. That piece around the language. What I heard, this was I was probably 8, 9, or 10, so a little further along in the development, and I heard, I brought home my report card, 5 A's and 2 B's, and this was the direct language that my mom shared was, well, maybe next time it'll be all A's. What I heard was, that's not good enough. So we've all had those experiences where we, as a coping mechanism, I'm shifting away from calling it a coping skill, it's a coping mechanism that we've developed to not feel the pain, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and to start disconnecting from that essence. This is the progression of who we authentically and genuinely are, that infinite possibilities. So what's the next thing? Oh, did everyone connect with that place of anger within them? Did you acknowledge it, honor it, bless it, and now the next thing that we begin to develop? What do you suppose?
Acceptance?
Well, that is after we go back down on the healing path,
And the other way?
but on the path outward. So in that disassociation, we develop a mechanism called a shield.
What do you call that?
A shield.
Oh. To go with the sword.
to go with the sword.
Xena is born.
We developed this thing that we hold out in front of us so that people can't see our fear, our sadness, or our pain. We certainly, and we certainly don't, maybe we're still connected with that golden child and we want to protect that. So maybe that's part of that. Maybe it's a wall, maybe maybe my name's Pink Floyd and I build a wall and oh, by the way, which one's pink? Yeah, I remember. And that shield could look differently. It could be, I used the concept that I've shared with Michelle that I used to be able to hide in plain sight. So it was invisibility, So the invitation now is connect with a part of you that you may have generated as a shield. Anybody care to share what that might have looked like or what it might have been?
I created independence.
Ditto.
I do not have a whole lot of other awareness of what I may have done. I'll have to go through an inventory of this. That's a tough question.
Some of us just shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Detaching yourself from other individuals, being a loner.
And that is a byproduct of turning that sword inward. Maybe our shield is drugs and alcohol or any other type of addiction. Maybe it's studying. Becoming hyper intelligent. So as a byproduct of my life experience, coming from that, I was predominantly, it wasn't exclusive. I was, I interacted obviously with the phone calls, the Social Security office, whatever, and other people of the hearing world, but as part of my life experience and coming out of that deaf world, and having to learn to minimize my communication, because American Sign Language is not a literal interpretation. It's not, I am going to the bathroom. It's, I'm going to the bathroom. The English translation is full in my mind, but the wording is short and abrupt. And as the involvement of that, receiving that anger from mom, the shame, the not good enough message that I took on, I developed a shield of aloofness. So my response to inquiry was short and often ambiguous. If somebody asked me a long, drawn-out question, it was like, yeah, or, no, whatever. For me, school, that was wonderful. That was a beautiful experience for me. But it was, the family environment and other times when I was in a place of stress, fear, pain. So what are some other mechanisms that perhaps y'all developed as a shield? Some
Not speaking out.
not speaking up,
Disappearing.
disappearing. And sometimes we use that shield as a weapon. Certainly getting into academics, getting the hyper intelligence, to then use that, becoming a workaholic, investing in Society says, "Oh, that's good. You're earning a living. You're doing well." But what is the disconnect? What is the message, the self-limiting belief that we're carrying as a result of? I'm doing this so that I don't
So you can avoid.
feel, experience, or whatever. There comes that time, in our journey, where we may have done the work. We may have reconciled what happened to us and the stories or the meanings we've associated with it. And we arrive at a place of generally connected in the flow or engaging the world from that place of our own personal axis mundi, connected and are in alignment. We go and get a massage. And, a day later, something comes up. That massage might have released a muscle that had stored some energy or some memory, some emotion. So it's an ongoing process. We're not all the Dalai Lama, or fully and completely enlightened beings. We're not Saint Germain. We're human. And it's okay to be human. It is part of our collective process of our spiritual path. So we arrive at that place through our life experience where we're that rational adult. At whatever age, maybe it was, we had to, because of our circumstances at our early age, had to leave home and become self-sufficient. So maybe it's 16, 17 or younger, or, finally moved out of mom's basement at age 40, whatever. It is what it is, and it is when it is. But we engage the world from the neck up, generally. Carrying around these stories and disconnected from the rest of our authentic self. And certainly far disconnected from that essence that we come into the world with. So at some point, we've all made that decision to turn around and make that inward journey. For whatever reason, whatever the inspiration was, and a lot of times people, they get knocked down. That rational adult gets knocked down by whatever happens in life, and they continue to look outward for something to help, to fix what's going on. But it's not until we make that inward journey that we begin that path of healing, the internal healing that allows us to be in that flow. When we first turn around and make that inward journey, we're met with that shield. We get, perhaps the first time we turn around and look at it and we go, oh, no, nothing back there. So we then re-engage the world here from the neck up. But at some point, we meet that shield and we come to it from that place, from that heart space, and we go, okay, put that shield down. I see what, you're wanting the protection. Let's make the inward journey. Let's continue on this path. We explore the crooks and nannies. And then we're met with that anger. And we might be repelled at it first, but ultimately we make the choice, the decision to move through that anger, through the fear, through the pain, to reconnect with that goldenness, that essence, that infinite possibilities. And when we connect with that, and then fully embrace that, and it's not a one-time deal. Maybe we have to keep going back to the well. Maybe it's several trips. But each time we bring back that golden nugget, and then, get enough to where it embodies us, it protects us. You know, when we go back to that essence, that unconditional love, that infinite possibilities, that beauty, and we bring that forth, the pain turns to healing. And when we embrace that, and then we meet the fear gets turned to trust. We learn to trust. A lot of times, you know, what happens is in our experiences we disconnect from that ability, or maybe we overcommit to doing it when it is not, doesn't serve us. But that trust, that healthy trust, you know, we bring that forward, and we get in touch with the anger, and the anger, we now know how to express it in a healthy way. To stand in our power, to give voice, to set boundaries, set and maintain boundaries in a clean way. To put aside the belief systems that may have developed as a byproduct that limit us. So that is the journey, you know, and thank you all for arriving at that place where you turned around and you made that inward journey to reconnect with your heart and to connect with your soul and spirit and your body to the best of your ability. It's a continual process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.